The silence after the battle felt strange to Jake as he stood in the ruins of New Haven's Central Plaza. Where the Voidborn command ship had landed, only a crater filled with crystalline fragments remained. The sky above was clear for the first time in days, with no enemy vessels blocking out the stars. Around him, human survivors and alien allies began to emerge from the underground shelters and damaged buildings. Dr. Carter was gone, along with 17 other human volunteers who had operated the quantum network nodes across the galaxy. Their sacrifice had saved not just New Haven, but every remaining human in the galaxy. Ben Parker had compiled a list of confirmed survivors from the network activation. Over 3,000 humans were still alive on 47 different worlds and ships. Scattered but no longer alone, the predecessor ships hung motionless in orbit around New Haven like crystalline angels watching over the planet. The first voice had not spoken since the defense network completed its work. Jake wondered if the ancient beings had returned to their transcendent state or if they were waiting for something. The answer came when a single predecessor vessel descended toward the planet's surface. General Thrax's warriors and Captain Zix's crystalline ships remained at New Haven, helping with rescue and repair operations. The three alien species had proven their loyalty during the battle, fighting alongside humans against impossible odds. Sage Lera's mystic abilities were particularly helpful in healing the wounded and repairing damaged systems that conventional technology could not fix. The predecessor ship landed in the crater, where the Voidborn command ship had been destroyed. The vessel looked like a sculpture made of frozen starlight that hurt to look at directly. When the airlock opened, the first voice emerged in a form that resembled a tall human figure made of pure energy. Jake approached the ancient being with a mixture of respect and curiosity. "Your species has impressed us, Jake Morrison," the first voice said without moving what might have been its mouth. "In all our observations of galactic history, we have never seen a species grow stronger through adversity the way humans do. Most races either conquer others or are conquered themselves. Humans create something different." Jake looked around at the mixed groups of humans and aliens working together to rebuild the damaged colony. "We learned that cooperation is stronger than conquest," he replied. "The Voidborn and the Galactic Council both tried to rule through fear. That never lasts." The first voice seemed to nod in agreement, though its energy form made it hard to tell. The ancient being made an offer that Jake had not expected. "We could help your species transcend physical existence as we did millions of years ago. You would become beings of pure consciousness, free from the limitations of matter and energy. Many species would consider this the ultimate evolution." Jake thought about the implications of such a transformation. What would happen to our bodies, our families, our way of life? Jake asked. The first voice explained that transcendence meant leaving behind all physical attachments and existing as pure thought in quantum dimensions. It was a form of immortality, but it also meant abandoning everything that made humans distinctly human. Roy limped over to join the conversation, his left arm in a medical sling from injuries sustained during the final battle. "Jake, we should discuss this with the other survivors before making any decisions," he suggested. "This affects everyone who is left alive." The first voice agreed to wait while the humans considered their choice. Jake called a colony-wide meeting in the main assembly hall that evening. Humans from all over New Haven gathered to hear about the predecessor offer. The three alien allies also attended, as their future was connected to humanity's decision. The hall was only half full because so many colonists had died in the battle, but those who remained listened carefully as Jake explained their options. "We can accept transcendence and become immortal beings of pure consciousness," Jake told the assembled crowd. "Or we can remain human and rebuild our civilization with the help of our new allies." The discussion that followed was intense, with valid arguments on both sides. Some people wanted to escape the pain and limitations of physical existence, while others felt that transcendence would mean losing their humanity. Young Ben Parker stood up to address the assembly. "My parents died when Earth fell to the Voidborn. Dr. Carter died saving us all. If we abandon physical existence, their Sacrifices become meaningless. They died to preserve human life, not human consciousness alone. His words carried weight because he had been instrumental in activating the predecessor network. An elderly colonist named Helen raised her hand to speak. I have lived for 78 years and seen both joy and sorrow. The pain makes the happiness more precious. If we become beings of pure thought, will we still be able to love each other the way humans do? The first voice admitted that transcendent beings experienced existence differently than physical species. Jake made the decision that would define humanity's future in the galaxy. We choose to remain human, he announced to the assembly. We will rebuild our civilization and create something better than what we had before. The predecessors showed us that evolution does not always mean leaving your nature behind. The crowd applauded his choice. Though some people looked disappointed, the first voice accepted their decision with what might have been approval. You choose the difficult path, but perhaps that is what makes humans special. We will provide you with knowledge and technology to help rebuild, but you must create your own destiny. The predecessor ships began to fade from normal space as the ancient beings returned to their transcendent state. Before departing, the first voice shared one final gift with Jake. The quantum network revealed something important about scattered human survivors. They are following patterns that will lead them back to each other over time. Your species has an instinctive ability to find hope and connection even in the darkest circumstances. Construction of a new city began the next morning, built by humans and their former enemy allies working side by side. Captain Dix's crystalline technology helped create buildings that could withstand almost any attack. General Thrax's warriors taught human soldiers new fighting techniques that combined ancient wisdom with modern weapons. Sage Lyran's mystics showed human scientists how to heal environmental damage using energy manipulation. Roy took charge of communications, sending messages toward every location where human survivors might be hiding. The signals included coordinates for New Haven and information about the alliance with the 3 alien species. Come home, Roy's messages said simply. We are building something new together. Weeks passed as reports came in from across the galaxy. Groups of human survivors began making their way toward New Haven using ships provided by sympathetic alien species. A family of miners arrived from the Vega system. Colonists emerged from hiding places in the Centauri sector. Scientists who had been conducting research in remote locations learned that other humans were still alive. Jake stood on the observation deck of the new city hall, watching construction crews raise the framework for a memorial wall. The wall would bear the names of every human who had died in the war against the Voidborn, including Dr. Carter and the other network volunteers. But it would also include the names of alien allies who had fought beside humanity in their darkest hour. The memorial's inscription was suggested by Ben Parker and approved by the Colonial Council. Here stands the last human colony, where we learned that survival means more than staying alive. It means choosing to build rather than simply endure and finding family among strangers who become friends. The words captured something essential about the human spirit. As months turned into years, New Haven grew into a thriving city that welcomed refugees from many species. The Galactic Council had collapsed after the truth about their betrayal became known throughout the galaxy. In its place, a new alliance formed based on cooperation rather than domination. Humans became known as the species that brought former enemies together through their example of resilience and hope. Jake often visited Dr. Carter's grave in the Memorial Garden, where flowers from a dozen different worlds bloomed together. We kept our promise, Lisa, he would say to her headstone. We stayed human and we made something beautiful from the ashes. The wind through the alien trees seemed to whisper her reply. I knew you would. The predecessor defense network hummed with power as human minds across the galaxy, linked together through quantum consciousness. Dr. Carter felt the thoughts and emotions of thousands of survivors who had been hiding since their worlds fell. To the Voidborn, In the command center of New Haven, her body remained motionless while her mind traveled through dimensions that existed beyond normal space. Jake fought his way through the corridors of the Voidborn command ship alongside General Thrax's reptilian warriors. The walls seemed to be made of living shadow that whispered terrible things in languages older than human civilization. Voidborn soldiers emerged from the darkness like nightmares, their weapons firing beams of pure entropy that aged whatever they touched into dust. The first voice of the predecessors spoke directly into Jake's mind as he advanced toward the ship's core. "The network is almost ready, human commander. Your species has surprised us with your ability to maintain hope in the face of extinction. This quality is rarer in the galaxy than you might think." Roy's damaged fighter squadron provided cover for Jake's ground assault by attacking the command ship's external defenses. His 3 remaining ships dodged around massive weapon turrets that tracked their movements with mechanical precision. "Jake, we are taking heavy fire but keeping their attention away from your team," Roy reported over the radio. In the quantum realm, Dr. Carter faced the Voidborn Queen in a battle fought with thoughts instead of weapons. The Queen appeared as a massive shadow that contained the screaming voices of every mind she had ever consumed. "You cannot defeat hunger itself," the Queen spoke with the voices of billions. "I am the end of all things, the darkness between stars." Carter drew strength from the network of human consciousness that surrounded her in the quantum space. She could feel the determination of a mining crew hiding in an asteroid field, the courage of colonists defending a secret base, and the love of parents protecting their children on distant worlds. "You are not hunger," Carter replied. "You are just afraid of change." The battle in normal space intensified as predecessor ships engaged the Voidborn fleet with weapons that bent reality itself. When a predecessor vessel fired, space folded. Like origami, and enemy ships found themselves turned inside out or transformed into harmless energy patterns. The Voidborn responded by releasing creatures made of pure void that devoured light and matter. Jake reached the command ship's central chamber, where a massive crystalline structure pulsed with dark energy. The crystal was connected to every Voidborn ship in the fleet and served as the coordination center for their hive mind. General Thrax studied the alien technology with his ancient warrior's knowledge. "This crystal exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously," he explained. "We need to damage it in all dimensions to stop their fleet." Ben Parker monitored the quantum network from New Haven's command center as more human survivors joined the growing consciousness web. "We now have active nodes from 47 different locations," he reported. "The network is strong enough to activate the predecessor defense system." The ancient machinery hidden throughout the galaxy began to awaken after millions of years of dormancy. Dr. Carter discovered that the Voidborn Queen was not truly evil, just incredibly old and tired. The Queen had been fighting the same war for so long that she had forgotten why it started. "I consume because it is all I remember how to do," the Queen admitted in a moment of honesty. "I've been hungry for so long that I forgot what satisfaction feels like." The predecessor defense network created a cascade effect that spread across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. Wherever the energy wave passed, Voidborn ships found themselves unable to exist in normal space. They began to fade away like shadows when light is turned on. But the network was burning out from the massive energy release. Jake and his assault team planted explosives around the command crystal while Voidborn reinforcements rushed toward their position. The crystal began to crack under the assault, sending feedback through the enemy fleet that disrupted their coordination. Voidborn ships started colliding with each other as their hive mind connection weakened. In the quantum realm, Carter made an offer to the Voidborn Queen that surprised everyone, including herself. "You do not have to be hungry anymore. The predecessors learned to evolve beyond physical needs. We can help you find a new way to exist." The Queen paused in her attack. Considering this possibility for the first time in millions of years, Roy's fighter squadron made a final desperate attack on the Voidborn fleet's command structure as the defense network reached full activation. His ships dove through a storm of enemy fire to strike at the massive vessels that controlled the lesser ships. "This is for Earth," Roy shouted as his damaged fighter rammed into a Voidborn battleship's bridge. The explosion from Jake's charges finally shattered the command crystal completely. The destruction sent shockwaves through both normal space and the quantum realm where the Battle of Minds was taking place. Voidborn ships throughout the system began to lose power and drift helplessly through space as their connection to the hive mind was severed. Dr. Carter felt the network beginning to fail as human operators across the galaxy pushed themselves beyond their limits to maintain the connection. Several nodes went silent as the neural strain became too much for the volunteers to handle. Carter knew that she would probably die from the feedback, but the network had to hold long enough to complete the banishment process. The Voidborn Queen made her choice in the quantum realm. Instead of fighting to the end, she accepted Carter's offer of evolution beyond hunger. The Queen's massive shadow form began to change, becoming something that resembled hope instead of despair. "Perhaps it is time to learn new ways," the Queen said as her ancient rage finally began to fade. The predecessor defense network completed its activation sequence, creating a quantum barrier that pushed the remaining Voidborn ships out of normal space. The dark vessels disappeared like smoke in a strong wind, banished to dimensions where they could no longer threaten physical beings. But the victory came at a terrible cost as the network burned out completely. Dr. Carter felt her consciousness beginning to fragment as the neural feedback reached dangerous levels. Around her in the quantum realm, other human minds were fading as the strain became too much to bear. She had enough strength left for one final message to Jake and the survivors. "Remember us not for how we died, but for how we chose to live." The last Voidborn ship vanished from New Haven's sky as the defense network collapsed. In the command center, Carter's body went limp as the neural disruption helmet powered down permanently. Jake received word that the assault on the command ship had succeeded, but the news felt hollow when he saw his friend lying motionless in her chair. Jake stared at Dr. Carter holding the neural disruption helmet that could save New Haven or kill her in the attempt. The device looked like a crown of twisted metal and wires that pulsed with dangerous energy. Around them, the command center shook as Voidborn weapons struck the weakening planetary shields. Time was running out for the last human colony? "There has to be another way," Jake said, though he knew Carter was probably right about needing her specific neural patterns. She had spent years studying human consciousness and understood the science better than anyone else in the galaxy. But the thought of watching another friend die made his heart feel like lead in his chest. Before Carter could put on the helmet, young technician Ben Parker burst into the command center carrying an armload of data storage devices. "Wait," he shouted breathlessly. "I found something in the colony archives that changes everything." Ben was only 22 years old and had been working in the computer systems when the attack began. Ben activated the main display screen and showed them an ancient star map that had been hidden in the colony's historical files. The evacuation ships from the other human worlds were not running randomly. They were following this map that leads to something called the Forge. The map showed a location deep in unexplored space beyond the galactic rim. Dr. Carter studied the data with growing excitement. According to these files, the Forge is where the first intelligent species in the galaxy developed technology to transcend physical existence. They called themselves the Predecessors. Jake had heard legends about the Predecessors, but thought they were just stories told by alien mystics. Roy's voice crackled over the communication system from his damaged fighter ship. "Jake, we are down to 3 ships and the Voidborn are closing in. Whatever you are planning, you need to do it fast." Through the window, Jake could see explosions lighting up the sky as the final air battle raged above New Haven. Ben worked quickly at his computer terminal. "I am going to send a message toward the Forge coordinates. If any predecessors are still out there, maybe they will help us." He typed in a simple message asking for assistance and transmitted it toward the ancient location. Most people in the room thought it was a waste of time. To everyone's surprise, they received an answer within minutes. An ancient voice spoke through the communication system with words that seemed to echo from across time itself. The children of Earth call for aid. The eldest remember the courage of humanity. Help comes to those who stand against the darkness. The main display screen filled with readings from long-range sensors as something impossible happened near New Haven. Space itself began to tear open like fabric being cut with a knife. Through the rips in reality, ships of incredible design emerged into normal space. They looked like they were made of crystallized starlight and moved without any visible engines. Jake watched in amazement as dozens of predecessor vessels took positions around the Voidborn fleet. The ancient ships were smaller than the enemy vessels, but seemed to bend space around themselves in ways that made Jake's head hurt to look at. "This is the first voice," came the transmission from the lead predecessor ship. "We have returned to aid the species that reminds us of our younger selves." The first voice explained that the predecessors had evolved beyond the need for physical bodies millions of years ago, but they could still return to normal space when necessary. They had been watching the galaxy from their transcendent state, and were impressed by humanity's ability to grow stronger through adversity, rather than consuming others like the Voidborn did. Dr. Carter made an incredible discovery as she studied the predecessor technology. "My neural disruption device is not just a weapon. It is the key to activating an ancient defense network that the predecessors built before they transcended. The network has been dormant for millions of years, waiting for a species with the right neural patterns to activate it. The catch was that the defense network required multiple human operators positioned across the galaxy to function properly. Since Earth and the other colonies had been destroyed, it seemed impossible to find enough people. But Roy had an idea that might work. What about the evacuation ships that escaped from other human worlds? If any survivors received the activation codes, they could form a network. Ben began broadcasting activation codes toward every known escape route from the fallen human colonies. The codes were hidden in mathematical sequences that only human minds could recognize and decode. If any humans had survived the destruction of their worlds, they would understand what to do when they received the signals. As the predecessor ships engaged the Voidborn fleet, Jake realized that this battle was being fought on multiple levels. In normal space, ships fired weapons and maneuvered for advantage. But in the quantum realm where consciousness existed, something else was happening that his human mind could barely comprehend. Dr. Carter put on her neural disruption helmet and activated the device. Instead of dying from the neural feedback, she found herself connected to a vast network that spanned the entire galaxy. "I can feel them," she said with wonder in her voice. "Humans are still alive out there, hiding in space and on forgotten worlds. They are activating the network nodes." One by one, signals began coming in from across the galaxy as human survivors responded to Ben's transmission. A mining ship near the Vega system activated its node. Colonists hiding on a moon in the Andromeda sector joined the network. Families living in asteroid bases added their consciousness to the growing web of human minds. The Voidborn Queen, a creature of pure hunger that lived in the space between dimensions, sensed the growing threat to her forces. She began to manifest in normal space as a shadow that seemed to devour light itself. The Queen was older than most stars and had consumed the minds of billions of beings across galactic history. Jake led a ground assault team toward the Voidborn command ship that had landed in New Haven's Central Plaza. With him came General Thrax's warriors, human militia, and volunteers who knew they might not survive the mission. They moved through streets filled with smoke and debris, dodging energy blasts from enemy soldiers. The predecessor defense network was almost ready to activate, but it needed one final component. Dr. Carter realized that the network required not just human neural patterns, but the specific type of collective imagination that humans developed when working together under extreme pressure. It was not enough to have individual minds. They needed to think as one unified consciousness. As Jake's assault team reached the enemy command ship, Carter made contact with human survivors across the galaxy through the quantum network. Together, their minds formed something greater than the sum of their parts. They became a collective consciousness that could challenge the Voidborn Queen in the realm where thoughts became reality. The battle for New Haven was about to reach its climax, fought simultaneously in the physical world, where ships and soldiers clashed, and in the quantum realm where the future of consciousness itself would be decided. The Voidborn fleet appeared at the edge of the solar system like a dark cloud blocking out the stars. 200 ships of twisted metal and shadow moved toward New Haven with deadly purpose. Jake watched from the command center as the enemy vessels took positions around the planet. Each Voidborn ship was 3 times larger than anything in the human fleet. "All civilian populations to the underground shelters," Jake ordered over the colony-wide communication system. This is not a drill. Below in the streets, families gathered their children and moved quickly toward the reinforced bunkers. The colonists had practiced this evacuation many times, but everyone knew this time was different. Dr. Carter worked frantically in her laboratory to complete the neural disruption device. The machine looked like a metal helmet connected to a massive computer system. "The device is almost ready," she reported to Jake, "but someone will need to interface directly with it during the battle. The neural feedback could be fatal to the operator." The first Voidborn attack came without warning. Energy beams from the enemy ships struck New Haven's planetary shields with tremendous force. The protective barrier flickered and sparked as it absorbed the assault. In the engineering section, technicians worked desperately to keep the shield generators from overloading. Roy led a squadron of human and alien fighters into space to harass the Voidborn fleet. His voice crackled over the radio as his ships dodged between the massive enemy vessels. "Their hull armor is incredibly thick, but we found weak spots near their engine ports." The small fighters darted like insects around giants, striking fast and then retreating before the Voidborn could respond. Captain Zix's crystalline ships provided crucial support by reinforcing the planetary shields with their own energy matrices. The crystal formations on their hulls glowed brighter with each enemy attack they deflected. General Thrak positioned his warrior vessels at strategic points around the planet, ready to intercept any ships that broke through the outer defenses. The battle raged for 6 hours without pause. Voidborn ships pressed closer to the planet while the defenders fought desperately to hold them back. Sage Lyran's mystic vessels moved through space like flowing water, their energy weapons creating beautiful but deadly patterns against the dark enemy hulls. Jake coordinated the defense from his command post, moving ships and resources where they were needed most. The tactical display showed red enemy markers surrounding the smaller number of blue defender symbols. "Squadron 7. Fall back to grid reference 4, he ordered. "Crystalline ships, increase shield support to the northern hemisphere." During a brief pause in the fighting, Roy's squadron managed to destroy one of the smaller Voidborn vessels. The enemy ship cracked like a broken egg, spilling strange dark energy into space before it disappeared completely. The small victory gave the defenders new hope, but 200 enemy ships still surrounded them. The situation became critical when a coordinated Voidborn assault overwhelmed the eastern shield section. Warning alarms screamed through the command center as energy readings dropped rapidly. "Sir, the eastern generators are failing," reported the chief engineer. "We cannot maintain full coverage much longer." Jake made a difficult choice. "Concentrate all remaining shield power on the population centers. Let them take the outer industrial areas." As he spoke, Voidborn energy beams began striking the surface of New Haven. Mining facilities and manufacturing plants exploded in brilliant flashes that could be seen from orbit. The enemy pressed their advantage and began landing troops on the planet's surface. Voidborn ground forces emerged from dark dropships like nightmare creatures made of shadow and metal. Their weapons fired beams of pure darkness that dissolved anything they touched. The colonial militia met them with conventional firearms that seemed almost useless against such foes. General Thrak's warriors proved their worth in the ground battle. The reptilian soldiers fought the Voidborn with ancient weapons that somehow damaged the energy-based invaders. Their claws and blades are made from materials that exist partially outside normal space, Dr. Carter explained after analyzing the weapons. They can actually hurt beings made of dark energy. Roy's fighter squadron found itself trapped between two groups of void-born ships during a rescue mission. 3 of his pilots were shot down before they could escape. Roy himself barely made it back to New Haven with his ship's hull cracked and engines failing. "They are adapting to our tactics," he reported to Jake. "Each attack wave is harder to stop than the last one." The main shield generator began showing signs of critical failure as the bombardment continued. Sparks flew from control panels and the air filled with the smell of burning electronics. "We have maybe 2 hours before complete shield collapse," the chief engineer warned. Once the shields fell, nothing would protect the civilian shelters. From orbital bombardment. In her laboratory, Dr. Carter completed the final adjustments to her neural disruption device. The machine hummed with dangerous energy that made the air around it shimmer like heat waves. "The device is ready," she announced. "But using it will require someone to link their consciousness directly with the machine. The neural strain will probably kill the operator." Jake immediately volunteered for the suicide mission, but Carter shook her head. "My research shows that I have the specific neural patterns needed to operate the device effectively. Anyone else would die without accomplishing anything." The thought of losing his chief scientist and friend made Jake feel sick. But he knew she was right. Voidborn ground forces reached the outskirts of the main colony. As night fell over New Haven, the sound of energy weapons and explosions echoed through the streets as Thrax warriors and human militia fought a desperate retreat toward the central district. Families huddled in the underground shelters, listening to the battle raging above their heads. Standing at the command center window, Jake watched his world burning under alien attack. Fires lit the horizon where enemy forces had broken through the outer defenses. In space above, Roy's remaining fighters continued their hopeless fight against overwhelming odds. The alliance of outcasts had fought bravely, but they were running out of time and options. Dr. Carter approached Jake with her neural disruption helmet in her hands. "I am ready to activate the device," she said quietly. "But we need to get closer to the main Voidborn command ship for maximum effect." Jake looked at his friend and fellow officer, knowing this might be the last time he would see her alive. The morning alarm rang through New Haven as Jake organized the colony's defenses. Workers moved weapons and supplies while engineers reinforced the shield generators. Dr. Carter had been working in her lab for 18 hours straight, trying to build her neural disruption device. The Voidborn fleet would arrive in less than 2 days. A strange signal came through the communication array during the afternoon. The officer on duty called Jake immediately. "Sir, we have an incoming transmission, but the signal is heavily damaged. It looks like a human ship." Jake rushed to the communications room. On the screen, static cleared to show a familiar face that Jake thought he would never see again. "Jake, this is Roy Blake," the man said from what looked like a damaged cockpit. "I know you think I died at Proxima, but I made it out in a stealth ship." Roy had been Jake's friend for 20 years. They had served together in 3 different wars. Jake had watched Roy's ship explode during the Battle of Proxima Centauri 6 months ago. "Roy, how are you alive?" Jake asked. The transmission flickered as Roy's ship moved closer to New Haven. "That is a long story, but I have important information about the Voidborn invasion. We need to talk in person. I am requesting permission to land." When Roy's small stealth ship touched down at the spaceport, Jake was waiting with a security team. His old friend looked tired and had new scars on his face, but he was definitely alive. They embraced like brothers who had been separated by war. "I thought I lost you," Jake said. Roy's expression turned serious. "You almost did, but what I learned while hiding in space will change everything." In the secure briefing room, Roy revealed the shocking truth. "The Galactic Council betrayed us, Jake. They made a deal with the Voidborn to eliminate humanity." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. The Council included dozens of alien species that humans had fought beside for over a century. Why would they do this? He demanded. Roy activated a holographic display showing recorded council meetings. "They fear human potential." Our ability to find solutions in chaos patterns makes us unpredictable. The other species think we will eventually become too powerful to control. The recordings showed council members discussing humanity like a dangerous disease that needed to be removed. Dr. Carter joined the briefing and shared her research with Roy. The Voidborn harvest human neural patterns to enhance their own strategic abilities. But working with the council gives them access to detailed information about human colonies and defenses. Roy nodded grimly. That explains how they found every hidden outpost so quickly. The situation became even stranger when long-range sensors detected 3 alien ships approaching the system. Jake prepared for another attack, but these ships sent peaceful communication signals. The lead vessel identified itself as Captain Zix of the Crystalline Hegemony. We request permission to speak with the human commander, the alien voice said, against the advice of his officers. Jake allowed the 3 ships to approach New Haven. In the landing bay he met representatives from 3 different species. Captain Zix looked like a walking crystal formation that spoke through harmonic vibrations. General Thrak was a massive reptilian warrior covered in battle scars. Sage Laren appeared to be made of flowing energy contained in a translucent form. We know why you are suspicious of us, Captain Zix said through a translation device. But we are here because the Council betrayed our species as well. We refuse to participate in the genocide of humanity. General Thrak stepped forward with his hands empty of weapons. The Council fears any species that thinks differently than they do. They want a galaxy of predictable servants. Sage Lyran's energy form pulsed with different colors as she spoke. We have been watching the Voidborn destroy human worlds. Your species fights with courage that reminds us why we once believed in the Council's ideals. Jake studied the 3 aliens carefully. Trust had become a dangerous thing in a galaxy full of betrayal. Roy placed his hand on Jake's shoulder. No, it sounds crazy, but we need all the help we can get. These 3 species have ships and weapons that could make a difference. Dr. Carter had been scanning the aliens with her medical equipment. Their neural patterns show no signs of deception. I believe they are telling the truth. Jake made one of the hardest decisions of his military career. If you are willing to fight beside humans against impossible odds, then you are welcome here. But know that we will probably all die in 2 days when the Voidborn arrive. Captain Zix's crystal body chimed like bells. Death with honor is preferable to life under Council tyranny. The alliance between humans and their former enemies began. Immediately, Zix's crystalline ships had powerful shield technology that could reinforce New Haven's defenses. Thrak's warriors were experts in close combat and ground warfare. Lyran's mystics understood energy patterns that could help predict Voidborn attack. Strategies. As night fell, Jake stood on the observation deck with his new allies. The combined fleet now included 15 ships instead of just 3 human patrol boats. It was still not enough to defeat 200 Voidborn vessels, but it gave them a fighting chance. Roy joined him at the window. Do you think we can actually win this? He asked. Jake watched the alien ships positioning themselves around New Haven. I think we can show the galaxy that some things are worth dying for. Maybe that will inspire others to stand up to the Council and the Voidborn. He thought about the human colonists sleeping below and the children who deserve to grow up free. Tomorrow would bring the final preparations for battle. The unlikely alliance of outcasts would face the greatest military force in galactic history. But for the first time since Earth fell, Jake felt something other than despair. He felt the spark of hope that had always driven humanity to achieve the impossible. Jake Morrison stood in the command center watching the stars through the thick glass windows. His weathered hands gripped the metal railing as red lights flashed across the control panels. The communication officer turned to him with fear in her young eyes. Sir, we just lost contact with the Centauri colonies, she said. Jake felt his heart sink deeper into his chest. That made 12 human worlds gone silent in 6 months. The colony of New Haven stretched below them on the surface. Of Kepler 442b, 50,000 people lived and worked in the domed cities that sparkled like jewels against the alien landscape. They had no idea that they might be the last humans left alive in the entire galaxy. Jake had been keeping the terrible news from most of the colonists. Fear would only make things worse. Dr. Lisa Carter rushed into the command center carrying a data pad in her hands. Her lab coat was wrinkled, and her hair was messy from working all night. "Jake, you need to see this," she said breathlessly. She set the pad on the main table and pulled up her research. "The Voidborn are not just destroying our colonies. They are taking something from the people before they kill them." Jake looked at the brain scans on the screen. "What are they taking?" he asked. Lisa pointed to the strange patterns in the neural activity. "Human consciousness works differently than other species in the galaxy. We process information in chaos patterns instead of straight lines. This lets us find solutions when others cannot. The Voidborn are harvesting this ability." The thought made Jake sick to his stomach. The Voidborn were an ancient race that moved through space like a plague. They consumed entire star systems and left nothing behind but empty darkness. Now he learned they were stealing the minds of his people. "How long do we have?" he asked. Lisa checked her calculations again. "Our long-range sensors show a massive fleet approaching this system. They will be here in 72 hours. The command center fell silent except for the humming of machines. Everyone knew what this meant. New Haven would be the final battleground for humanity. Jake had fought in many wars during his 30 years in the Galactic Defense Corps. He had seen planets burn and watched good soldiers die. But he had never faced odds like this. The last human fleet had died defending Earth 6 months ago. Admiral P. Collins had gone down fighting with every ship under his command. Now Jake had only a few old patrol boats and colonial militia to defend an entire world. "Get me a full inventory of our weapons and ships," Jake ordered his staff. "Contact every able-bodied person in the colonies. We need soldiers, pilots, engineers, anyone who can hold a weapon or fix a machine." The officers scattered to carry out his commands. Jake knew it would not be enough, but humans had always found ways to survive impossible situations. Dr. Carter stayed behind after the others left. "There might be another way," she said quietly. "My research shows that human neural patterns create something like quantum consciousness projection. If I can build a device to amplify this effect, we might be able to disrupt their coordination systems." Jake looked at her with new hope. "How long would you need?" She thought for a moment. 2 days, maybe less if I get help from the engineering teams." That evening, Jake walked through the colony streets. Families were having dinner in their homes. Children played in the parks under the artificial sky. No one knew that death was racing toward them through the void of space. He stopped at a memorial wall where the names of colonists who had died building New Haven were carved in stone. Soon his name might join them, along with every other human in the galaxy. A young boy ran up to him holding a toy spaceship. "Are you really a space captain?" the boy asked with wide eyes. Jake knelt down to the child's level. "Yes, I am," he replied. "Are you going to protect us from the bad aliens?" The boy continued. Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. "I will do everything I can," he promised. As night fell over New Haven, Jake returned to the command center. The communication officer was still at her station, hoping for any word from other human colonies. "Keep trying," Jake told her. "Someone out there might still be alive." He knew it was probably false hope, but hope was all they had left. The next morning would bring preparations for war. They would train civilians to fight, set up defensive positions, and ready every weapon they could find. But tonight, Jake allowed himself to remember better times when humanity spread across the stars with optimism and dreams. Those days were gone now, but the spirit that had carried humans to the stars still burned in the hearts of the people sleeping safely below. In 72 hours, the Voidborn would arrive at New Haven. Jake Morrison would be ready to make his last stand, not just for the 50,000 souls under his protection, but for the memory and future of the entire human race.